Hi, welcome to the Corner of Knit and Tea, episode 279. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, which is where this episode and every episode show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop where I sell my handspun yarns, and we have a Ravelry group called The Corner of Knit and Tea. Hi, how are you? It is Tuesday, May 26th, and I am recording a day late because yesterday was the Memorial Day holiday here in the United States. I also, if I'm being 100% honest, I wasn't sure that I wanted to record, and I will get into that in just a little bit. So how are you? I hope that this message finds you well. We are doing fine. We are healthy. The areas around us have started to open up, and unfortunately we're not very far from Missouri Lake of the Ozarks, which you probably saw in your news feeds this weekend because everybody was out and about in people soup in the lake, and I expect we'll be seeing a spiking of cases soon. In our neck of the woods, we stayed indoors. We did have two friends who both live alone over on Saturday, and we barbecued outdoors and sat and chatted outdoors. We spent almost no time in the house, preferring to be out in the open air. We have all been working from home and just going to grocery stores, and so we sort of took the opportunity to catch up a little bit, and it almost felt, dare I say, normal? Even though we took plenty of precautions. People brought some of their own food. We had all plasticware and utensils. We tried to have nobody touching the same dishes. I brought the trash can out so nobody had to touch each other's trash. We tried very hard to enforce all the social distancing that we could while still interacting with someone, and it was kind of nice, even just for a little while. Then yesterday, on Monday, Wes had a full tank of gas in his car, and he said, let's just go out for a drive. And so we went out for a few hours, and he just likes to meander and drive where he knows not, turn here, just head out. And so we got about an hour and a half away from home, and the one thing we did do is we went through a drive-through Sonic here. They do a drink called a cherry limeade, which is usually a white soda, so Sprite, 7-Up, something of that nature, like a lemon lime soda, and then they flavor it with grenadine, which is, they flavor it with grenadine, which is basically the flavor of maraschino cherries, and then they throw some cherries and some fresh limes in it. And to me, it has always sort of signified the coming of summer, which in the US Memorial Day weekend it usually is, and so it was kind of a fun treat. So we are doing fine. When I say I was not entirely in the mood to record, basically this week I have some setbacks and some things that I need to fix in my crafting and some projects that did not go exactly as planned. And so I feel like I don't have very much to show you, and that which I do have to show you is probably getting ripped or sideburnered for a while, and it was just enough this week, and I don't know, with my mood, with everything that's going on, no one really likes to get on a podcast and show you or publicly share all of the things that they have done that don't turn out well, and I do realize that that is what makes this real and not just something that I'm only showing my best side, and it makes it human. So it's not, I don't know, it's not that I don't want to share these things with you, it's that to me they're upsetting in the face of my crafting, and so, of course, who wants to crow about the mistakes they've made? Anyway, so let's start the podcast proper. Today I am finishing off a tea in my stash, which was Lemon Drop Black from Tea Runners. Tea Runners runs a monthly subscription. This was from a while ago. I don't even want to guess how long ago. It's been a while. And this was a black tea with organic lemon peel and lemon verbena. And I really, really liked this one. I think they made this one of their regulars, but I admit I have not looked in a while because I have 2 boxes full of tea. and I am not getting through them fast enough. So it is exciting to me when I finish a bag of tea, because this is like getting a skein of well-loved yarn out of the stash and into something else. So I'm excited to say that I am tossing this bag, but it is a delicious cup of tea, and I'm drinking that today in my Hershey, Pennsylvania mug. No, it's not chocolate in a chocolate mug, but it will be fine. So that's delicious and a good afternoon pick-me-up. Although it's getting late, I probably shouldn't drink caffeine for too much longer or I won't sleep tonight. So let's talk about the only project I can show you from this week that has had positive progress and that I am pleased with. This is a shawl that I am knitting as a sample for Zen Yarn Garden. It is the Sol Queen, S-O-L, like sun, ray of sun, shawl from Lavanya Pratersella. And she intended it to be knit in 2 weights of yarn, one a skein of fingering weight yarn and one a skein of like a mohair or textured kind of lace weight yarn. I have actually just paired 2 fingering weight yarns together. And again, I am using Zen Yarn Garden's Superfine Merino base, which is 100% Superfine Merino, which is luscious. And I am using it in the Metropolitan, the Art Walk series of colorways. They are colorways inspired by paintings, and the ones that they have done this year are inspired by the Met, which is a art museum in New York. And these colors were designed for Vogue 2020. New York, Vogue Live, let me try this again, Vogue Live New York, which was in January of 2020, which seems like ages ago. The 2 colorways that I got were this variegated one that has oranges, yellows, browns, and blues, and this was after a Gauguin painting called Still Life with Teapot and Fruit, and I have since learned that the yarn is actually just called Still Life on their website. This is available for purchase if you like the colorway, and it was sent to me with a coordinating skein, which is showing up as black, but is actually a really, really dark navy. Now, when I came to you last week, I told you that I thought I was going to use the navy as the main color and this one as the accent. And I started to do that, and then I realized that the main color, having the navy as the main color, was making it super, super, super dark. And so I actually did the first section of the shawl and sort of thought, wow, it seems like a waste to not use all the variegated yarn, to only use a portion of it. So I decided to switch them, which makes this a really bright, really colorful shawl. If you wanted to tone your colors down, you could definitely use the semi-solid and then use the variegated as the highlight. So I will show you what I have so far. I am fairly far into this. I only have, I think, 2 more sections to go. 1 more section. So you'll see, well, let's do this. The shawl Sol Queen, as I said, it is by Lavanya Pratersella. It is a 2-color brioche shawl, worked in alternating sections of garter stitch and 2-color brioche, and it is worked in sections that kind of radiate outwards like the sun's rays. So this is technically the right side of the project, which I can only tell because I can tell where I wove my ends in. As I will show you, for the most part, brioche is completely reversible. So I will show you in, like, I can only tell up at the top where I started the tab, the garter tab at the top. So this is the technical right side of the shawl, and as you can see, I have used the main color as the Still Life, and then the on this side it is the navy that shows up as color dominant. And the deal is that the sections grow both in width and in length, so I am fairly far into this. I have 1 more section that looks exactly like this, and then it is the border of the shawl, which is slightly different. So if you reverse it, you come up with this side, and I like this side the best, even though technically I think this is the back side of the work, but as I said, brioche ends up reversible, and this is the side with the navy in the background and the multicolor as the dominant color. And the difference would be that all of these little sections at the side, which show off the beautiful variegated colors, those would be dark, dark blue. And so as you can see, the shawl is much lighter with the variegate as the main color and not as the background color. So again, it's kind of based on your preferences. I just wanted to use up all this gorgeous variegate, and particularly on this side, I really love it. It pools a little bit now that I'm looking at it kind of from far away on the camera, but not super noticeably. And this just reminds me of like tons and tons of fall colors and summer colors. And I think it's great that we are using orange and yellow for the sun. I also want to point out that I was concerned about whether the orange and yellow would kind of get lost, if there would be enough of those to compete with some of the browns and blues, and it definitely does. This kind of reminds me actually of Indian corn with all the different color kernels, especially if you look at some of these sections. Hopefully you can see at some of the sections where you have the thin lines of the variegate color running in there, and they look like Indian corn kernels or corn chips to me, like blue corn chips. So I am very happy with this. I have basically been working a section a day, which is how I've gotten through it so quickly. That may actually, the last couple sections may take me a couple nights to get through, because at this point I am, I believe, almost 300 stitches wide, if not, I might not quite be 300, but I'm getting very close, and I'm pretty sure I will be over 300 at the end. So again, this is the Soul Queen pattern by Lavanya Petrosella. I am knitting it on the needles called for, which is a US 5, which is a 3.75 millimeter needle, and I am knitting this on my Collage Square interchangeable needles, which I actually really like. And one of the things that I really, really like about them is that the sizing is etched on the side, so I always know what size needles I have. And it is laser etched, so the sizing does not wear off, so I always know what I'm holding on to. I will tell you that I don't find a huge noticeable difference in using square needles versus round needles. I know that a lot of people who have hand pain say that they really help them knit. I do not have a lot of hand pain, so I don't specifically think they make a lot of difference in my knitting, but I do enjoy using them, and they were there and in the right size, so I just grabbed them. So that's a US 5, and then again, this sample will be finished this week. I'll show it to you, and then it will go off for blocking. Will go off for blocking and then photographing. The one thing that I will say that I'm finding just a smidge challenging about this shawl, and I always find it challenging in brioche, is where to hide my ends. Because in brioche, both sides of the shawl can technically be, it's technically a reversible, and both sides can be worn, and there is actually a lot of cutting of the navy blue yarn, which only appears in certain sections. So I have lots of little bits of the navy blue yarn to weave in, as I'm sure you can see here, and finding good places to weave in my ends so that they don't show or come untucked is a little hard. In this case, because the blue is so dark, that does help a little bit. But I am enjoying that. That was a lot of positive progress this week. And actually on Saturday, I sat out on the deck in the sun and knit on this for a little while, and it was absolutely lovely. So that is the one and only project that I'm going to show you that got good forward progress this week. The next project that I talked to you about last week and I was getting really excited about was the Ripple Crop Top by Jessie Made Designs. And this is, as the name states, a rippled crop top. Now, I decided not to make mine so cropped because I decided that I did not want to show off my midriff as much. So I knit to either 10 or 11 inches. I can't remember exactly how far. And then I started the fronts and back. And when I showed you last week, I had the fronts done and the back partially done. So at this point, it is actually seamed together and it does start to look like a sweater. What is missing are the sleeves. However, I tried this on this week because I thought, wow, the neck hole and the armholes look suspiciously big. And I do think that this is intended to be a little bit oversized. However, What I found when I tried it on was that the neck was almost indecently deep. And that the armholes were actually so wide that I could never get away without wearing this, even with some sleeves on it. I could probably never get away with even with short sleeves on it, I could probably never get away with wearing it without a tank top underneath. And since this is theoretically a top that I'm going to wear when it's warm out and it's already merino cashmere nylon yarn, I decided that I didn't want to have to wear a tank top underneath it. My first thought when I tried it on and it was entirely too deep was maybe I could just pull out the shoulders and pull back approximately an inch and then reattach the shoulders and just shorten the neck hole by a little bit and shorten the armholes by a little bit. The only problem with that is that the bottom, remember how I said that I switched over to starting the armholes at about 10 or 11 inches, and I thought maybe that might be a mistake because I might want it to be a little longer. Well, so the length right now is perfect for where I want it. So the problem is that if I take an inch or two out of the top, then out of the top section at the shoulders, it also brings the bottom up by a couple inches. You see where I'm going with this. So unfortunately, I am going to have to rip. And here's the thing. Knitting with this is an absolute pleasure. It is crazy soft. And I really do want the finished object, and I really do want this as a top that I will want to wear, because I can't tell you how many times this week I thought, I'll just put sleeves on it and I'll wear a tank top under it and I'll do it. But that really wasn't appealing to me. And then I was like, I'll just pull out the shoulders and I'll pull it back an inch and I'll reattach and it won't be that big a deal. Sometimes I really just have to rip to get it right, and I hate ripping and I hate losing work, and I really wanted this to be a quick kind of instant gratification knit, and it has turned out to not be that. So, and I should say, none of this is the fault of the pattern. This is a mismatch between the garment the pattern produces and how I would like this garment to fit on me. And I should say that a tiny ripple crop top with oversized arms was never going to be the garment that I wanted it to be. And so, I think the pattern is wonderful. It is wonderfully written to produce the garment. As written, it produces the garment that it says it's going to produce. It's just that I have decided to modify things to make it more wearable for me, and according to my specifications, it was not quite right, so I'm going to end up making adjustments. I will talk about all the adjustments on my project page for Ravelry. I will not give away the secret sauce, as it were, because this is a paid-for pattern, and I do want Jessie Maid to get her earn her well-deserved dollars for her pattern, but I will put notes on my project page of the modifications that I made and how long I say knit before I split for sleeves, and then how long I knit the armholes. So that unfortunately was a bit of a loss this week, and I've just been stewing about it. I finished this, I think, like Monday or Tuesday after recording last week, and then sat all week and kind of stewed about what it was that I wanted to do. And then I think about 2 nights ago, I finally gave in and decided that I needed to rip it, and then I decided I'd show it to you first. So you can see what I did, but pretty soon you won't be able to. So my plan is to rip it back to where I started the armholes, go ahead and knit 2 or 3 more inches to make it more of a length that I like. That's gonna definitely cover the top of my jeans, and then I will do the armholes, and I will omit the last inch that I knit of the armholes. I believe I knit these to about 8.5 inches, so I will probably go back and do 7.5 inches would be my guess. And then after that, I will proceed to the sleeves and we'll see how that goes. And I think it's probably just going to be short sleeved because I think I'm probably going to be done with this one. And I'll just enjoy wearing it that way. So that is my rippled not so crop top and sort of not so going that well. So that is what I'm going to do. I don't think I've really spent a ton of time on anything else. I have put in more rows on my blanket, but I decided on my ripple along for the crochet and for the 100-day project, but I did not bring that because it looks exactly like the same half, the first half of the blanket, and I just decided that I didn't need to show that to you today. I have gotten another inch or so done on my Weekender sweater by Andrea Mowry, but it didn't look any different to my eye. I'm basically still a couple inches away from separating for the fronts and backs, and I haven't decided if I'm just going to try and finish that one up before I go back to this one or exactly what I'm going to do. The other thing that has picked up again is I got more chicken feather knitting, so I've been working on that, and I didn't bring any to show you because they look the same as all the other ones that I have done, but I have been working on that as well. So that will sort of explain why I don't have a ton to show you this week. I'm going to take a sip of tea, and then we will talk a little bit about my problems with spinning and what I plan to do about it in the coming week. So the last couple of times I talked to you about spinning for a specific pattern, and it is the passeggiata or passeggiata. I don't know exactly how it's pronounced. It is Italian, and it is a chevron scarf knit in the widthwise direction by Tina Whitmore, who is the proprietor behind Freya Fiberworks, or Freya Find Hand Paints. And I decided that I wanted to do it, but rather than order some of her mini gradients, which is what she uses, I decided to spin some fiber that I had, some nestlets, which were little 0.8 to approximately 1 ounce bumps of fiber from nest, leftovers and bits from the ends of braids, and I decided that I was going to spin these as singles and spin them straight through in their colors end to end and create a kind of wild, crazy yarn that I could then knit up to the passeggiata and sort of emulate what it would be like to do it with the gradients. So this is most of it. It is about 4 ounces. Well, I should say, okay, I spun one full, well, let's talk about a bunch of things. This is what I have so far, at least the stuff that has been washed and dried and ready. This is approximately 4 ounces. Now, let's talk a little bit about this. I decided that I wanted to spin singles, and I used, I have an Acreworks bobbin, which comfortably, well, okay, I decided I wanted to spin on my Ashford Joy, which is a dual treadle, and I have a jumbo bobbin from Acreworks, which holds between 5 and 6 ounces of fiber on it comfortably. So I went ahead and I spun, I think, about 6 or 7 of the little bumps, figuring I'd get 5 to 6 ounces on the first bobbin. And then I thought about maybe that I would stop and I would start knitting with that and then see how much more I needed to finish, see how much yardage I got, and then see how much more I needed to finish the project. Also because I didn't have enough unique colors in the packages that I had that I could do a different color, like I could do completely different colors. I was going to have to repeat a few, and so I wanted to see how far I got with the first section. As I've talked about in the past, spinning singles is definitely an art unto itself. When you spin fiber, well, I guess I should say, we always spin singles when we spin fiber. Singles is what that single strand of yarn, I don't know why it's plural, but it's always referred to as a singles yarn when you do the first ply. Oftentimes we ply that back on itself either twice or 3 times for a 3-ply or 4 times for a cable ply or as many times as you would like. David from Southern Cross Fibers years ago held a ply along to see how many plies people could do, and people got up into the like 20s plying together, you know, Navajo or chain plying numbers of chain plied yarns. So each chain plied yarn had 3 plies and then plying 3 of those together to get you 9 plies. It was very interesting. Normally we spin a singles, and normally when I spin my singles, I spin them with a certain amount of twist. And the certain amount of twist that I add is nothing mathematical, to me at least, because I am not that kind of a scientific spinner. But I over twist my singles, because part of the reason you add extra twist to your singles is that theoretically when you are applying them, when you ply, you twist the yarn in the reverse direction that you spun it. So you're actually undoing some of the twist that you did in the first spin. So generally when I spin singles yarn, they are over twisted so that they can release some of that when I ply. Now the problem is that when I'm spinning a singles yarn that I want to leave as a singles yarn, it ends up over twisted, which can result in biasing and all those spirally coils and an over energized yarn that's really hard to work with. So over the years, I have tried to teach myself to spin singles with varying levels of success. In general, not a lot. To spin singles, what you want to do is you want to add less twist. To spin singles that you want to stay as singles, you want to add less twist to them than you would normally add. So typically what you do is you would set your wheel on a higher whorl, which would result in fewer rotations per treadling, and then which would add fewer rotations to your twisting, and you would also want to slow down your treadling as you are letting the fiber go at a more normal pace, so you are adding less twist to each section of the yarn. In practice, I find this very, very difficult. So many years ago, I realized that one of the ways that I could sort of cheat this, which doesn't make me a great spinner, it just means I figured out a way to cheat it, is that I could spin at my normal twist, and then what I could do is I could run the yarn through my spinning wheel again, usually at high speed, very quickly, and try and undo just a little bit of that twist. So normally what I would do is I would just run the singles back through in the opposite direction to remove just a little bit of the twist. So that is what I did this time, except I ran into some difficulties. So, first of all, I spun my singles on an Acreworks bobbin, and as I said, that's a jumbo bobbin that can hold 5 to 6 ounces of fiber on it. I think I got somewhere around 5 ounces of fiber on it. However, when I went to pull it from one bobbin to another, as one does if one is removing some of the twist in your spinning, I could only find one of the regular Ashford wooden bobbins, and those only hold between 4 and 5 ounces of fiber on them. So as I ran the singles through and I took a little bit of the twist out of them so they puffed up just a little bit, I wasn't able to get the full amount from the first bobbin onto the second bobbin. So that's why this is only 4 ounces. I still have another ounce and a bit on a bobbin that I need to remove the twist from and then soak it and wash it. Soak it and let it dry. The second problem that I had was that as I removed a little bit of the twist in some sections where the yarn wasn't overly twisted, the yarn broke. And this is my fault. If you untwist the twist that you have, when you have fiber, the way you hold the fiber together and turn it into yarn is to add twist. If you remove too much twist that you've added, it will come apart in your hands and it will just be fiber again. So that was not terribly surprising, but it did result in a few breakages, which was disappointing to me. The final note, and this is completely my fault, checked out on I don't know whether it's coronavirus or whether it's just that I'm brain dead. One of the things that I had intended to do was I had intended to finish my singles. Now, normally when I finish a yarn, finishing the yarn means that I wash it and then let it hang to dry, which sets the twist and sort of allows it to relax into its final shape. It's much the same as you would do when you're blocking a knit or crochet garment. However, a lot of times when people spin singles, to finish the singles and to prevent some of the biasing and some of the untwisting that can happen in a singles yarn, a lot of people do what is called fulling their singles. And fulling your singles is basically just felting them a little bit. It's kind of what you're told you're not supposed to do, and you do it on purpose because it creates a more sturdy yarn from which to knit. So, to full your singles, normally what you would do is you would generally dip them in hot and cold water alternately and try and add a little bit of agitation. Some people go full at it and take the bucket almost the way they do where they would felt, and they fill it with hot water, and they use a plunger, and they try and agitate the you-know-what out of it. Usually what I do is I fill the basin with cold water, I dunk my yarn in there, I kind of rub it against each other and agitate it, I pull it out of the sink, I drain the sink, then I add really hot water, and I do the same thing, and I repeat. Usually I go cold, hot, cold. So about 4 or 5 times. And then when I'm done, I kind of, flick the yarn, or I don't even know what you would call it. It's some people call it thwacking, but I just kind of tense it, and then I hang it to dry. I made a crucial error here. The crucial error is that all the fiber that I spun for this project is superwash. Superwash yarn is designed so that it will not felt. Therefore, superwash singles in general will not full. So I did get a little bit, but what I ended up with is kind of a very loosely plied singles yarn that I'm afraid is going to fall apart, that is not stable. And I realized after I was trying to full it and nothing was really happening, what my mistake had been. At which point, I have to say, I was mighty discouraged. Because here I had taken some beautiful fiber from my stash that I had actually had a project in mind for. I had 1, overspun it, 2, broken it in trying to fix my overspinning, 3, neglected to full it to finish it the way I wanted it, and 4, ended up with a yarn that I'm not really sure is going to be any good to knit with. So that's why I haven't proceeded with getting the last bit off the bobbin and washing it. It's why I did not cast on a new project this week, which might have been this. And it's why I sort of, when thinking about what I was going to podcast this week, felt like I only had one project, the Soul Queen, to show you that had anything good going for it. So these are the singles that I created. As you can see, they are very loose and fluffy. They might knit up okay, they might not. I will probably give it the old college try, but I found it a little bit demoralizing, and so this was not necessarily one of my more successful projects this week. All that is to say, I am going to try and reset this week, which I realize it's already almost Tuesday evening. I'm going to try and reset this week. I have picked up my weekender. I think I'll probably work on that this week. I want to finish my Soul Queen shawl, and I have picked something new for spinning. As I said, one of the things that I have been doing while sort of during this pandemic is trying to support some of the dyers that I know and love by patronizing their shops. And one of my favorite dyers is Fat Cat Knits. She used to have a huge shop, and then she retired from dyeing, but then something didn't quite work out about her retirement plans. I don't know the full story. And so she has returned to dyeing, but at this point she does small batches and puts them up in her Etsy shop. So you can follow her. I believe on Instagram she is Fat Cat Knits Ginny, and it is Fat Cat Knits on Etsy. And does this have the... Let's see, she is Fat Cat Knits Dyer on Instagram, and she can also be found at fatcatknits.etsy.com. And a few weeks ago, she put up a couple braids of fiber, and I liked them, and so I hit buy. And this is 4 ounces of a colorway called Olivia on Polworth. And this will definitely be spun for the shop. I had someone comment that they were sorry that the last yarn that I spun didn't end up going in the shop. So this one definitely will. And Olivia is some great greens, blues, purples, and reds. So it's just kind of a fun, and there is really like a little bit of brick red in here, but also some pink and purple and magenta, and then you've got your light blue and your sky blue and kind of a green, and it's just some really beautiful colors. And technically, I guess I could spin this through almost as a gradient. I think I'll probably end up doing some kind of a fractal spin, but this kind of had some fun colors and kind of made me happy. So that is what I'm going to work on this week. That is Olivia, and that will be destined for the shop. So if that's something you think you might like, that will be, that's what I'm going to be working on. And I'm just going to go back to spinning the way I'm most comfortable spinning, and have put a good win in my bucket for next week. So, thank you for hanging with me. This turned out to be quite extensive. I hope that my explanations didn't bore you. I just wanted to sort of explain how I got where I was and the problems that I had and what I'm going to do to fix them, but also sort of explain why I wasn't entirely feeling motivated this week. So, thank you for joining me. If this was your first time, this might have been a little bit more of a down podcast than normal. I do tend to take my my learning opportunities a little harder sometimes than I should. So I do apologize if this was not quite my usual upbeat, fun, productive podcast. Hopefully I'll have more of that next week. And if you are a returning guest, thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope all of you have had a wonderful weekend and are slated to have a nice week ahead. And I will say, as I always do, until I see you again, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.